We begin today the Gemara on Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis, the last couple of words on the line. And so we're in the middle of a sugya here. The Gemara is discussing the first mission of this Pedic, where it brings a machlokes between Rab Meir and the Chachamim. So there's two cases here. One is when there's Dayanim, and now one litigant is passeling the other one's dayan that he chose, the judge that he chose. So Rab Meir says you have the ability to passel his dayan. The Chachamim say, no, you can't passel another person's dayan. You're going to have to bring proof of that if you want to passel his dayan. Then the next case of the Mishnah, which is the last case of the Mishnah, it says a similar thing, that if another person brings a witness, so Rab Meir says you can passel his witness. Chachamim say you can't passel another person's witness, you have to bring a proof for this. So the Gemara went through a long discussion here, different pshatim, what is the basis of Rab Meir's opinion? How is there such a thing that you could passel another person's dayan or another person's aid without any proof? Now the last pshat that we learned to before was Rav Yechanan. This was Rav Dimi, in the name of Rav Yechanan. And he said the case is that the other person says that he has two sets of witnesses. And now you, the other litigant, together with another aid, wants to testify and passel his aidim. So the question is, are you a negeya bedavar? Because he says he has two sets of witnesses. So even if you passel one, it doesn't mean that he's not going to be able to use the other against you anyways. So maybe you're not a negeya bedavar. So that was the basis of the machlokes between Rab Meir and the Chachamim when he has two sets of witnesses, whether you're a negeya bedavar, whether you're able to passel his witnesses. Okay, now the Gemara brings, Ravin brought another pshat in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Ki asa Ravin, when Ravin came, Omer Rabbi Yechanan, he said the name of Rabbi Yechanan as follows. We got now here, he explained both of the cases of the Mishnah that I mentioned, the case where you're passeling another person's dayan, the judge that he chose, or the case where you're passeling one of the Eidim that he's bringing. So he says as follows, Reisha, in the Reisha of the Mishnah, that it says that you're able to passel his dayan without any proof, the case is, Be'edim psulim, when it turns out that the other Baldin brought Eidim, and we have proof from elsewhere. We know that those Eidim that he brought are actually pasel Eidim. The Dayanim kshedim. But the Dayanim that he brings are kosher Dayanim. So in such a case we say, Migud pasli Eidim, pasli nami Dayani. Because we see that this person brought Eidim that are pasel, so if the other Baldin tainas, that this person's dayan that he chose is also pasel. We're going to accept that because we see that there's some basis to what he's saying. Since we see that this person is bringing pasel Eidim, so there's room to accept his taina that maybe his dayan is pasel as well. That's why we accept it even without proving it. And similar in the next case of the Mishnah, where it says that he's able to passel his Eidim without any proof, Sefer, the next case of the Mishnah, B'dayanim psulim, when it turns out that the Dayanim that this person chose are pasel, and the Eidim kshedim, and the Eidim that he brings, as far as we can tell, they're kosher. And now this Baldin is saying about them, no, that these Eidim are pasel. So here's what we say, the Migu, the pasli Dayani, since we found out that the Dayanim that he brought are pasel, so then we say that it's very possible that the Eidim that he brought are also pasel. So this was the basis of Rab Meir to pasel without any proof, because there is some basis to this. So in other words, the point the Gemara is answering is that even though l'chayra you're a negeya bedavar, we're talking about one Baldin that's testifying together with another aid. So now there are two. There are two testifying against this person's dayan or against this person's aid, but nevertheless, there's a problem that he's in a negeya bedavar. So the Gemara is explaining, although he's in a negeya bedavar, but nevertheless, because there's some basis to the psul, so we accept what he's saying. Maskefla Rava, but Rava asks on this, that we can accept the pshat that we're saying in the name of Rabbi Yechanan regarding the case of the Mishnah where you're saying that because we see that his Eidim apostle, the first case of the Mishnah, when we see that his Eidim that he brought apostle, so we say pasli nami daini, that because of this we're going to passel the Dayanim as well. So in such a case, when you want to testify and say this, you're not really a full negeya bedavar. Why not? Because ikke bedin achrini. There's always another bezdin, there's always another judge that you can choose after this. So by you passeling his dayan, you can't say that you're doing this because you're gaining money out of this. Maybe you're delaying the din taita. He'll find another dayan. So in such a case where the negeya bedava is not so strong, so we could say that this svara of the migu, the fact that we see that his Eidim apostle is enough of a reason to now take that as a basis to passel his dayanim. But Elo, however, in the next case of the Mishnah, Migu de Pasli Daini, Pasli Nami Edim, to use this svara of this Migu, that because we see that his Dayanim apostle, so therefore I'm going to now say that his Edim are apostle as well. But in such a case, Vaha Edim Su Leke. There's no other Edim that he has. These are the Edim that he has, and now that you're apostling his Edim, so you're going to win the Din Torah. So this, you're mamish a real negay b'davar here. You're gaining the money out of this. So to use this svara of the migu, which really doesn't have a really proper basis. It's just a svara of like an assumption, because his Dayanim apostle will assume that his Edom apostle as well. To use such a kind of assumption when you're a real negay b'davar, you're mamish gaining money by passing his Edom, how could you say such a thing? And since the Gemara, lo yitzriche, so it must be that the pshat and what Rabbi Yochanan said was over here is the ikakatacheres, that there is another group of Edom that the other Baldin has. So you're not really a full negay b'davar. You are maybe a negay b'davar to some extent. You're passing that these Edom here that are testifying against you, but you're not mamish gaining money directly in this because he does have another group of Edom. Says the Gemara. So now, what do we understand of this pshat of Rabbi Yochanan? Holeka katacheres. But if the other Baldin, so if he does not have a second group of Edom that he's bringing with him, Samai, so what's going to be the halacha then? Hachanami dolei matzu pasli. So you're going to say that then in that case, Rab Meir would agree that you cannot passel the first group of Edom that he brings. Says the Gemara, if so, Hainu de Rav Dimi. That's very similar to the pshat that Rav Dimi said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that the only time Rab Meir believes you to passel the other Edom is because he has another set of Edom. So it's basically the same point. It's coming to it with a different svara, with a svara of migu, but the case is the same case, that there's two sets of Edom here. Says the Gemara, you're right. As far as the case is concerned, it's the same thing. But Ike Beinayu, however, the difference between them is migu. This concept of migu, whether we hold of this concept, the Marsava Mirina migu. Rav Dimi is saying in the name of Rav Yochanan that there's a concept called migu, which could apply here and it could apply in other cases. That once you see that regarding one thing, this person brought pasal and dayanim, I now create a certain assumption that it's possible that his Edom are also pasal. That's a svara. Omar Sava, however, Rav Dimi holds, Le'em Rina Migu. There's no such a thing as migu. This migu is a weak svara. It's an assumption, but it's not something that has a solid basis. So Rav Dimi holds it. Rav Yochanan never said this thing. There's no such a thing as this migu, which whether over here, whether in other places, this union of migu does not apply. Gufe, going back to the first pshat that the Gemara said when it was discussing here, this opinion of Rab Meir. How does Rab Meir hold that a Baldin could passel a aid without any proof? So the Gemara before quoted that Omer Reish Lakish said about Rab Meir's opinion, Peh Kodesh Yom Dovazeh, a holy mouth would speak this way, how could it be? And therefore he explained what Rab Meir must have meant. And his pshat was Tni Eidoi, that he's saying that you're passeling just one aid. And as the Gemara explained before, the case was that they accepted to use one as two, and Rab Meir is saying that even after they accepted that, you can back out from that. That was the pshat that Reish Lakish said. But now the Gemara is going to focus on the language that Reish Lakish used here, the way he addressed the opinion of Rab Meir. So the Gemara says, Eini, is this true that this is the way Reish Lakish speaks about Rab Meir's opinion? But didn't Ula said, Roya es Reish Lakish bevismedrish, person that sees the way Reish Lakish was learning Torah and bismedrish, you would see that it's ki'ilu oike harem v'toichna zebezeh. It was with such a sharpness and such a fierceness, like someone that's uprooting mountains and he's grinding them one with another. Which means that when Reish Lakish had an argument with any of his colleagues or was discussing anybody's opinion, he didn't speak with this kind of humility and with this kind of expression of peh, kodesh, yema. If there's something that he disagreed with, he was very sharp about it. He would uproot it and grind. So why here are we saying that this is the expression that Reish Lakish used? So Ravina responded to this. You're talking about Reish Lakish, but anyone that sees the way Rab Meir would be learning a Bismedrish, he was even greater than Reish Lakish. He's uprooting mountains that are upon mountains, and he's grinding them with one another. So Rab Meir was even greater than Reish Lakish, and therefore Reish Lakish had humility in front of him. So the Gemara says, Hachika Amar. This is what was really meant to say. Wasn't wondering about the fact that Reish Lakish addressed Rab Meir this way, but it's not a question, but rather what it's saying is, come and see how much these Talmidei Chachamim expressed the love to one another. That even though Rab Meir, his nature was, and the way he learned was, with a tremendous sharpness, he's oikaharim, but nevertheless, when he addressed Rab Meir, he addressed him in this kind of way, with this love and with this humility of peh kadosh, that he's a holy mouth. That's what the Gemara is trying to point out here. And the Gemara brings another example for this. Kiha, the Yosef Rebbe, that Rebbe was once sitting v'ka'amar, and he said the following halacha. That, and this is referring to Shabbos. On Shabbos, we know there's a Isser of Atmana. On Shabbos itself, you're not allowed to take any hot food and insulate it. You're not allowed to wrap it in towels or insulate it on Shabbos itself. Even if it's an insulation, it doesn't add to the heat anything, but on Shabbos, you're not allowed to do any Atmana. Now, Rebbe added to that and said that just like this is with hot foods, the same thing is with something that's cold. You're not allowed to take something that's freezing cold, fresh, freezing cold water, and you want it to maintain its coldness, so you can hide it and just insulate it in the ground, in the sand. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbos, because if you're going to do it with the cold, you're going to come to do it with what's hot. So now, when Rebbe said this, Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi said to Rebbe, Abba, my father, Rabbi Yosi, he allowed to insulate something that's cold on Shabbos. So when Rabbi heard this, he responded, if so, kvar hoyrezaken. The older Rabbi Yosi, which was older than Rabbi and was very great, he already said so, so therefore we're going to follow the opinion of Rabbi Yosi. So we see how Rabbi accepted the opinion of Rabbi Yosi, so with the proper honor, with the love. And the Gemara now explains the chiddush of this. Amar Rav Papa, so Rav Papa said, Boyerei, come and see how much of the Tanaim are expressing love one to another. Because the Ilo, Rabbi Yosi Kayam, if Rabbi Yosi was alive, he was subdued and sitting in front of Rabbi like a student. Rabbi was the Nasi in that time. So even if Rabbi Yosi was older than him, but nevertheless he was subdued to him. And the Gemara proves this to Rabbi Shmuel, but Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Shmuel, but Rabbi Yosi took the place of his father. He was just as great as his father. And he was sitting by Rabbi like a student. And nevertheless, Rabbi, with humility, accepted what Rabbi Yosi said, and he said, he already said the halacha that you're allowed to insulate something that's cold, and so this is showing the respect and the love that the Tanaim had for one another. So in connection to this, the Gemara brings that this kind of behavior, we see that there's a difference between the Tanaim and the Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael and the way they learned with one another in Bavel. So Amar Rabbi Yishia, what's the meaning of the pasuk where it says, I have two sticks, one is a pleasant stick, and another one is a stick that bruises. So what's the difference? What are these two sticks used for? Noyam, the Noyam refers to the Talmid Chachamim, as we just described, the way it was in Eretz Yisrael. Sheman imin zeh lezeh ba'alacha. They're pleasant with one another in halacha, even when they argue with each other. But nevertheless, as we see, pekodosh and kvahoire. Chayvlim, then the stick which is wounding someone, this refers to the Talmid Chachamim in Bavel. Their style of learning was totally different. They would wound one another in the questions that they were asking one another, and when they were discussing a matter of halacha. As we see it in the Talmud Bavli, constantly questions back and forth, the discussions and all the that this is the style of learning in Bavel, the Chachamim in Bavel, that was different than Eretz Yisrael. Another pasuk that expresses the same thing. So the pasuk says, "Vayomer eila shnei bnei Yitzar ha'imdim v'gomer." The pasuk says these are the sons of Yitzar. Yitzar is oil, olive oil, and then earlier on it says the Shnaim zeisim aleh Yitzar. So earlier in the pasuk it says Shnaim zeisim aleha. Sorry, that's how you read it. So Shnaim zeisim aleha. So over here it refers to them as Shnaim zeisim, olives. Before it said Yitzar, which is the oil, the olive oil, and here it says Shnaim zeisim aleha. So why does it switch the expression from before zeisim to afterwards Yitzar? So the Gemara says, Yitzar, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, when it says in the pasuk Yitzar, so Rabbi Yitzchak says, El Talmid Chacham Sheberetz Yisrael. This refers to the Talmid Chacham in Eretz Yisrael, Sheneichim zelazeh ba'alacha, that they're pleasant to one another when it comes to a matter of halacha. Or Rashi says, Mishamnin zelazeh, they're like oil that is beneficial, that's useful for one another in halacha. Keshem and Zayis, just like Shem and Zayis. And Shnaim Zeisim, Aleha, when it says in the pasuk the term of Shnaim Zeisim before there, Elu Tamid Chacham Shebavel. This refers to the Chachamim in Bavel, Shemirudin Zelazeh B'Halacha Kezayis, that they are bitter to one another. When one said a halacha, all the questions that they asked, were making his halacha that he said bitter, showing the questions and problems that there is with this, like the Zayis. That was the style of learning in Bavel. Another pasuk that speaks about Bavel and the nature of the people and the learning in Bavel. So in the Nevuah here, this is all psukim from Zechariah. So it says, I lifted up my eyes, and I see, and there are two women that are going out, and there's a spirit in their wings, or a wind in their wings, and the other one also has wings, like the wings of this bird, which is called a chasida. And they lift up this ephah, which is a measuring cup, between heaven and earth. And I said to the malach that's speaking to me when I saw this vision, where are they taking the ephah, this measuring cup to? And he told me, they're taking it to Eretz Shinar, which is to Bavel, to build a home for them, for these two women, one with the wings that has a wind in it, and the other with the wings that are like the Hasidah, to build a home for them in Bavel. Now, what is this vision all about? What is it saying? The two women that it says here in the pasuk refers to, one is Chanufa, flattery, and that's what it says in the pasuk, that they had a ruach bekanfeya. That refers to that refers to the second one. The Chanufa refers to the Kanfeya Chasida. The Chasida means that it's someone that shows himself to be like a Chasida, like Chassidim, but really he's not. So this is someone that's the Chanufa is basically something that's based on a lie. It's a falsehood, flattery, right? Chasida, yeah. Rashi says a little bit of a different shot. Okay, but over here it's a taitches that the Chasida is Chanufa. It's flattery. It's a lie. But there's another one. Then the other one was V'gasa Saruach Sheyardu LeBavel. And then the other woman that has the wind, the ruach in the wind, in the wings, that refers to Gasa Saruach, the arrogance, the haughtiness. Those are the two things that were brought LeBavel Nachis. They descended and they came down to Bavel, and that's what the pasuk is saying, that there's this measuring cup, which refers to the Yetzer Hara that descended in Bavel, and in these two ways, that they're building a home for these two bad attributes, which is Chanufa and Gasa Seruach. But the Gemara asks on this, but didn't the master say, Asara Kab and Gasa Yardu Loilam? There are 10 measures of arrogance that came down to the world. Tisha Natla Elam. Elam, which is not Bavel, it's near Bavel, but Elam took 9 of these measures of the arrogance, and Va'achas Kaloilam Kula, and 1 is in the rest of the world. So here we're saying, though, that the Gasa Saruach made its place in Bavel, came down Dafka to Bavel. Says the Gemara Bavel Nachis. The Gasa Saruach, as we see here in the Nevuah, came down into Bavel. But then V'ishtarvuvi, hu de'ishtarvev le'elam. But then, from there, it slipped into it, eventually left Bavel, and it went into Elam, which is near Bavel. And the Gemara proves this, the Ekanami, going back to the pasuk we quoted before, the Chsiv, livnois la bayis, the Eretz Shinar, to build for her a home in Eretz Shinar. So the pasuk over here says, law, that means that it's only for her. Right? So meaning only one. It said before that there was a home, it should be really 2, because there's a home being built for Gasa Saruach and Bavel, arrogance, and also for chanufa, for flattery and for lies. But nevertheless, the pasuk says, "Law livnis, law bayis, beres shina," which is only one. Right? Or another way to darshan this is because the word law should be written with a mapekei, law for it, but it doesn't say it law with a mapekei, and that means that it didn't remain there. It left from Bavel. It went to Elam. Right? So therefore, the bayis, meaning bayis is a home where you're settled. It didn't settle in Bavel. The Gasa Saruach then left to Elam. So Shmam, this is from the Lashon of the pasuk. We see the pshat that we said here. But the Gemara still asks. We know that Gasa Saruach is in Bavel because Va'amar, the master said in another place that similar Gasa Saruach Anios. What's a sign that there are people that are arrogant? When you see poverty, and the reason why they're poor is because of their arrogance. And now we know it says in another place that Va'anios leBavel Nachis, that from the poverty that there is in the world, a big measure of the poverty came down to be Dafke and Bavel. So if so, we see over here that Bavel is a place that's poor. So it must be that Bavel is a place that still has the Gasa Saruach, because that's the sign for the Gasa Saruach, the arrogance that's in them. Says the Gemara, Maya Nias. When it says over here that a siman for Gasa Saruach is poverty, doesn't mean poverty, V'gashmi is money. It means Aniyas Taira. If people are poor in their learning of Taira, that's a sign of Gasas Ruach. And in Bavel, actually, they had a lot of Torah. Because in Bavel, they learned a lot of Torah, they taught a lot of Torah, as the Gemara is going to bring over here now, and therefore in Bavel you don't have this Gasas Ruach that ended up in a different place, in Elam. Now it says about Elam, Achais lanu katana, you're like a little sister for us, v'shadayim ein la, and you do not have any breasts. What does this mean? Amar Rabbi Yechanan, zu Elam. This refers to Elam, the Chachamim in Elam, shezachsa lilmaid. They merited to have great Chachamim that learned Torah, but v'lezachsa lilamid, but did not teach Torah. So therefore it compares it to someone that has milk, but is not allowing anyone to nurse and take from that milk. Torah is compared to milk, like a baby that gets his life from the milk that he eats from the mother. But over here in Elam, they did not teach Torah to anyone else. That's in Elam. Now my Bavel, what happened in Bavel? Rabbi Yechanan says the name Bavel itself. That's what the Gemara is asking. What does the name Bavel mean? Belula b'mikra. The word Bavel means that it's a mixture. It includes in it everything. You learn Gemara, and the way they learn Torah in Bavel, it has in it Mikra, the Psukim of Chumash, Belula b'Mishnah. You have the Mishnayos and Belula b'Talmud, and it has in it the Talmud, which is the Gemara, the reasons, the explanations for the Gemara. So in Bavel Adarabah, they learned a lot of Torah. They taught Torah. One more pasuk the Gemara brings regarding the Torah in Bavel, b'machashakim Shivani. What does this mean? What is this pasuk going on? So this is also this is in Eicha, the pasuk that Yidden were placed in a place of darkness, Kemeisei Olam, like a place of death. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah Zeh Talmudish Bavel. This refers to the learning Torah in Bavel. So Rashi here connects this to what the Gemara said before, that because the Chachamim in Bavel were not pleasant to one another, and they would argue with one another and fight over every halacha, and they would make each other's opinions bitter. So therefore, this is the bitterness and the darkness of Bavel. This is Talmud Bavli. Other Rishonim, however, Rabbeinu Hananel here says that Machashakim Shivani in Bavel is showing on the Maila of that they learn Torah. That they learn Torah on such a level that the reasons and the depth of what they explained in Bavel is so deep that it's hard to understand what they're saying. It's like darkness because it's so deep. Adarab, it shows in the Maila of learning Torah in Bavel. So this inyan is brought in Chassidus in different places. It's a famous maimer also from the Rebbe Rashab in the Hemshech of Samach Vav, where he quotes this Gemara of Machashaka Shivani, and he explains that there's in the Lashon of Chassidus, there's a difference between Ur Yashar and Ur Chayzer. When you have in the Talmud Yerushalmi, where everything is learned, and you see L'chatchila the emes, with no questions, not with all this fakeness and this discussion, and in Talmud Bavli, where everything is a question and a contradiction and issues, and then the Gemara resolves. So on one hand, it looks like a big chesaron in their learning, the way the Gemara is describing it before, and the way the Talmidei Chachamim are questioning one another. But on the other hand, dafka, that kind of learning brings you to a deeper understanding. That's the Chayshach itself brings you to a much deeper level of understanding. That's the real the Machashaka Shivani. So the Pshat of Rashi and Rabbeinu Hananel goes together because they were arguing so much. Adarabah, this itself reveals a deeper depth in Torah. That's Bechlal, the Shadish of, he speaks of there about the Shadish of Aveda in this world. When a person works things out, this reveals a greater level of godliness in the world. The Rebbe also explains this Benegeh to the Gemara before, when it speaks about the Chanufa that there is in Bavel, and the falsehood, so to speak, that there is in Chanufa and Bavel. This falsehood is Adarabah. Bavel was a place where, because they had this Metzias of Sheker, so by digging through the problems that there is in the Sheker of Bavel, that brings you to the Emes Lichtigkeit of Torah, even on a deeper level. And that was the whole kavanah of this entire Gemara here, explaining the Maila really that comes out in Talmud Bavli. And as it is, that any time there's a machlokes in Talmud Yerushalmi, Talmud Bavli, we always paskin like Talmud Bavli. So it must be that there's a greater Maila in this kind of learning in the way it is in Talmud Bavli. Zakteilige Mishnah, going back, this is actually a Mishnah that was, the Gemara already mentioned this before, regarding the judges that are being chosen for a court case. So Omaloi, one Baldin, one litigant says to the other, Neman alai Abba, even though for a judge you can't have a relative, a father, but I trust, we're going to use my father for one of the judges, or Neman alai Avicha, I even trust your father to be one of the judges, or Neman alai Shleisharoi Baka, I trust even three Royim, shepherds of cattle, that they can come and be, they don't know the halachas, they don't know Torah, but I trust them, they can come and paskin and be judges in our din Torah. So what happens now? Rav Meir says, even though they made this agreement and he accepted it, he can still back out of this. However, Chachamim say, once they made this agreement, you cannot back out from this. Another case, similar, in a case where in the Torah you became obligated to swear for to your friend that your argument is correct. Now, how do you usually swear when you swear by a bezdin? You have to swear by it with the Sefer Torah and the name of the Eibishter. It's a very severe thing to make a shvua. You're swearing Hashem's name. Now, v'amalai, the other Baldin says to him, Doirli b'chaya roishcha. You can swear, and you don't have to swear the way it's usually done in bezdin in Hashem's name. You can swear just when a person swears outside of bezdin b'chlal. He says, "I swear," he says in his life, but not in the Eibishter's name. So he's saying, "I'll accept from you just this kind of a shvua." So Rav Meir says, even after you accept this from your friend, you can back out and say, no, I want to have the full regular shvur with all of its severity, the way it's done in Bezdin. Chachamim said, once you agree to this, you cannot back out from this. That the case in the Mishnah, the first case of the Mishnah is he accepted the father or his father that he should be a judge, even if it's only one amongst the three judges. But nevertheless, in such a case, you could, Rab Meir says, that you could still back out of this. Even though you have another two judges, just one amongst them, which is his father, but it doesn't matter. You can still back out from this. I accepted it, but Al Pitaira is really a relative, and it says I don't have to accept this judge. Even after I accepted it, he can back out from it. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, Machloikis b'mocholach. The machlokes here in the Mishnah, whether you can back out or not, is only in the case of macholach. So in every din Torah you have a tiveya and a nitva, the claimant and the defendant. And the difference between them is the claimant wants to be moitzi mammon. He wants to take money from someone. The defendant is defending himself and wants to keep the money. So who over here in the Mishnah, who is the one that's agreeing to this? Who's the one that's saying, okay, I accept this? So Shmuel says that the whole machlokes over here is in the case of macholach. When the Teveya says to the Nitva, I'm meichel to you. I'm meichel to you to be able to use this judge, and if the judge will paskin in your favor, I'll accept that psak din, and you'll be able to keep your money. So I'm forgiving you. So in such a case, we say that because he accepted that, so the money is already in the defendant's possession. He has it. You forgave that money, and it's already by him. So in such a case, as the machlokes, this is where Rav Meir says, you can't back out of this, because you already meichel to money that he already has. But if it's the other way around, the defendant is saying to the claimant, the nitva saying to the teveya, that I'm accepting the psak din of my father, of your father, that then I'll pay you, and if they say that I'm chayav to pay you, that you'll be able to be moitzi mammon, and I'll pay. Over here, over here, everybody will agree that he can back out from this because he was accepting that he would have to pay. So he has the money now. The fact that he should be able to be moitzi mammon to give it to him, for that he could say, as long as I have the money in my possession, I'm not accepting these dayanim that are not kosher for me to have to pay the money to him. Over there, everybody agrees that he can back out. Again, what?
Because he has to pay.
It's not a matter of negei b'davar to be moitzi mammon. You can't be moitzi mammon from another yid unless you have proper dayanim, right? So over here he said, I'll allow you to take the money out of me even without proper dayanim. But I'll be told you can't. So it's not a matter of mechila. When you have the money over here, there's a mechila. So you have the money ready, I'll keep it. But when you get to being moitzi mammon, you have to have the koyach of Torah to be moitzi mammon. So even if he agrees, he can always back out for that. Because al pi Torah, you cannot be moitzi mammon from another yid without proper bezdin. Rabbi Yechanan, however, Rabbi Yechanan says, no, be'etel locha machlokes. Even in a case, or in a case of be'etel locha, there is a machlokes as well. When the nitva says to the teveya, I'll accept the psak din, and I'll give the money. So over here, there's the same machlokes between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim, whether you can back out or not. Okay, so now the Gemara asks on Rabbi Yechanan's opinion, what did Rabbi Yechanan mean to say? So is the argument, according to Rabbi Yechanan, only regarding this case, when he was saying that I'll give money based on the psak din of these dayanim that are not really kosher? That's when they're arguing whether you can back out or not. But in a case where it's the teveya being meichel to the nitva, he's saying that I'll accept the psak din and you can keep your money over there. There, everybody would agree. Even the Chachamim, or even Rab Meir, that is, would agree that you can't retract from this. Or maybe what Rabbi Yechanan meant to say is bein bezu machlokes, that in both cases, whether it's etelach or emchalach or meichalach, that is, in both cases there's a machlokes whether you can back out. Shema, so the Gemara brings a raya. Rava clearly said, Omar Rava. When Rava explained the pshat of the Mishnah, Rava said, Machlokes be'etin loch. The machlokes here between Rab Meir and the Chachamim, whether you can back out or not, is only in a case where the nitva says to the teveya, I'll accept the psak din and I'll pay you the money. But in the case where it's a teveya that says to the nitva, I'm meichel the money that you already have. In that case, he was meichel and you can't have charata. So now that according to Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabbi Yochanan said that be'etin l'cha then is the machlekes ava b'machal l'cha divrei kol and yachal lachsa boy. So then Rabbi Yochanan. So what Rav is saying is he's saying like Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. If what Rabbi Yochanan was saying is that the machlekes of Rabbi Meir and Chachamim is in both cases, so Rav Adama Kaman, according to who is Rav saying his opinion? What Rav is saying is not like Rish Lakish, that says that the machlokes is only by machalach. Sorry, not Rish Lakish. It was Shmuel. It's not like Shmuel that said the machlokes is only by machalach, and it's not like Rabbi Yochanan. If we're going to say that according to Rabbi Yochanan, they're arguing in both cases. But the Gemara says we can't prove from the way Rava explained the Mishnah. Rava, time of the nafshei kama. Rava could be saying his own opinion. Rava had a different way of how to understand and how to interpret the Mishnah. According to Rava, the argument here is only regarding a case of etin lach. But in a case where you're being meichel, where the other person already has the money in his possession, and the teveya says to the nitva, I'll accept this psak din, and you can keep the money, there's no machlekes. There everybody agrees that you can't back out from this. So Rav has his own pshat in the Mishnah, a third pshat in the Mishnah. But the Gemara asks on Rav's pshat, what does it say in the end of the Mishnah? The second case in the Mishnah is that you chayiv to swear for your friend. And the other Baldin tells him, you don't have to make the regular shvuah, swear in your own life. So Rav Meir says you can still back out from this, that you allow your friend to swear this way. The Chachamim you cannot back out from this. Now, what's the case over here? In the case of a shvuah, says the Gemara, my love, don't you think that the shvuah that we're talking about over here is we're talking about a shvuah where a person swears and then he's swearing in order to pater himself from paying. Usually, minat Torah, the shvuahs are that a person swears when he has the money in his possession and someone else wants to be mitzi the mammon from him, and he's swearing to pater himself from paying. And so the Mishnah over here is saying that the machlekes of Rav Meir and the Chachamim is regarding a case where the other person allows you to swear not in the way you usually swear in Bezdin in order to pati yourself. So you clearly see in the Mishnah that Rav Meir says that even in a case where it's regarding the other person being meichel to you, that you want to pati yourself, still Rav Meir says that you could retract from this. So how could Rava say? So the havaleka machalach. So this is a case like the other person is being meichel, the money that you already have. You could swear and pati yourself, and he's meichel, and still Rav Meir says you can back out of this. So how does Rava say that in such a case everybody agrees that you can't back out of this? Says the Gemara, that's not the case of the shvuah we're talking about over here. But oisan hanishban v'neitlin. We're talking over here about those kinds of shvuahs that chachamim were masakin. There are cases that chachamim were masakin. So Rashi brings there from the Gemara and shvuahs by a worker and by a person that someone stole from him, that he could swear and be mitzi mammon. That's what the Mishnah is talking about. The havelei ka'etelach. So over here, it's the other person that's saying to you that he's going to accept the psak din, even if that means that he's going to have to pay you. It's over there that Rav Meir says you can back out of this. But like Rav said, in the case of machalach over there, Rav Meir would agree. But if that's the case, but if so, this machlekes in the second case of the Mishnah is basically identical to the case of the Reisha. It's two cases where you're telling the other Baldin, I'm ready to accept the psak din of this dayan, or I'm ready to accept even this shvuah that's not a real shvuah, and I'll pay you. So they're both making the same point. Why does the Mishnah repeat the opinion of Rav Meir twice? Says the Gemara, the Mishnah says the first case of the Mishnah where you are agreeing to accept the psak din, it's not totally in the other baldin here. You're not saying to him, I'm going to accept your shvuah. You're accepting das acherim, which means you're accepting a certain judge, which is usually pasul, that you're going to accept their opinion, their psak din. That's the first case of the Mishnah. And then but then the Mishnah also has to say that the opinion of Rav Meir regarding a case where you're telling the other Baldin, I'm going to accept your shvuah, even though you're swearing not like you usually are supposed to swear. And they're not the same exact thing. And the Gemara explains the svara of the difference between them. With tzricha, and it's necessary to have both. Because if we would only say the first case where you're accepting a certain judge that I'll accept their psak din to pay, I would say b'hakam Rab Meir. It's only there that Rab Meir says you can back out of that because the matzi hadabe can back out of it. Why? Because in this case where he says I accept this judge, he's not really fully accepting that psak din, even if he'll have to pay. Because the Amar, he says to himself, Mi yemed de mizakile, who says that the other person's going to win? Maybe he's saying, I'm accepting my father, your father, because I know that they're honest and I'm going to win. He's expecting to win. And then when he sees that it's not going his way, so then he backs out. He never really accepted that there's, even if he should have to pay. So there, Rav Meir says you can back out. But if you're telling the other Baldin, to me, I allow you to swear not the way you're supposed to. You could swear. So over there, I would say that over there, he agrees to the Rabbanan that you can't back out of this. Because over here, when you were saying this to your friend, you were definitely serious about this. You know that he's going to go ahead and swear like you just said he could, not with a serious shvuah of Torah. So in such a case, once you said to your friend you could do that, why should you be able to back out? And then therefore the same thing, if we would only say the second case regarding the shvuah, I would say baha kamid rabbanan. Maybe only in this case rabbanan say that you can't back out. But in the previous case regarding when you accepted a certain judge, over there I would say maybe they agreed to the rabbanan agreed to Rab Meir that over there you can back out because you weren't serious about this. So therefore the Mishnah has to say both of these cases, that in both cases Rab Meir holds you could back out, and in both cases rabbanan hold that you can't back out. Another discussion regarding the Mishnah. Reish Lakish said, the machlokes in the Mishnah, whether you can back out or not, is lefnei gemar din, before the psak din. Avalacha gemar din, once there's already the psak din, divrei hakol ein yachal lachsabay. Here everybody agrees that it's too late. Once there's already a psak din of the bezdin, and it was a father, your father, his father, that was used as a judge, you can't back out of accepting this psak din. Rabbi Yechanan says, La'acha gemar din. The machlokes in the Mishnah is, even after the gemar din, you could also back out from this agreement that you're going to accept the gemar din from this judge. Machlokes, they still argue whether you could back out or not. So similar to before, here the Gemara has the shaila. When Rabbi Yechanan said this, does he mean La'acha gemar din machlokes, that the argument is after the psak din? Avulufnei gemar din. But if it's before the psak din, divrei hakol yachal lachsabay, but Rabbi Yechanan mean to say that then everybody agrees, even the Rabbanan agree that you could retract from your agreement. What Rabbi Yechanan meant to say is that in both cases there's the machlokes whether you can back out or not, whether before the gemar din or after the gemar din. Tashema, so the Gemara brings a proof of this. The Amar Rava. Rava said that the halacha is as follows: Kibbul olav karev apostle. If you accept it, if one baldin accepts and says, okay, we can use a relative or someone that's apostle for the judge. Lefnei gemar din yachal lachsabay. If it's before the gemar din, you can still retract from that agreement. La'acha gemar din, after it's already the psak din, en yachal lachsabay. You can't back out of this anymore. So now, if you're going to say that the pshat and what Rabbi Yechanan said is that la'acha gemar din machlokes, that only after the gemar din there's an argument about this. But if before the gemar din divrei hakol yachal lachsabay, then everybody agrees, even the chachamim would agree that you can back out of this. So then I can understand why Rava paskin this way, because Rava the Amak Rabbi Yechanan va'aliba de Rabbanan. Rava is paskening according to Rabbi Yechanan's interpretation of the Mishnah, so he's paskening like the Rabbanan's opinion. In other words, as Rashi explains this, the Gemara understands that Rava is paskening here a din. And if Rava is paskening, if there's a machlokes between Rab Meir and the Rabbanan, who are we going to pasken like? We're not going to pasken like Rab Meir. We're going to pasken like Rabbanan, which is the majority opinion. So therefore, over here, it's the pshat over here is that he's paskening like the Rabbanan. And this comes out according to Rabbi Yechanan, because according to Rabbi Yechanan, even the Rabbanan agree that lefnei gemar din, you could still back out. After gemar din, you can back out. So then it makes sense why he's paskening like this opinion, like the Rabbanan. But if according to Rabbi Yechanan, the argument is in both cases, but whether before gemar din, after gemar din, the Rabbanan always hold that you can't back out. So then Rava Dama Kaman, according to who is Rava paskening? According to Rabbi Yechanan, it's not going to fit with the Rabbanan's opinion. And Rashi also says he's definitely not paskening according to Reish Lakish's interpretation of the Mishnah like Rab Meir's opinion, because as I mentioned, he wouldn't pasken like Rab Meir's opinion against the Rabbanan, which are the majority. So Elalav, therefore it must be Shma Minol La'acha Gemar Din Machlokes. that what Rabbi Yochanan meant to say is that the argument whether you can back out of this agreement is only after the Gemara Din. Before the Gemara Din, everybody agrees that you can't that you could back out of the agreement. That is, Shema Mino, this is a clear proof. So Rashi and Taisus both out of here. The Gemara here did not want to say what it said before in Amar Aleph when it brought a similar thing. Over there, the Gemara said that Rav is a third opinion. Maybe Rav is not like Rish Lakish, not Rabbi Yochanan. Rav is a third opinion. The reason the Gemara said that before is because there Rav was explaining the pshat in the Mishnah. Rav wasn't saying a psak din. We're going to get to the pshat of the Mishnah. We could say Rav has a third pshat of the Mishnah. Here, Rav is saying a psak din. He's not saying pshat of the Mishnah. So he's saying the psak din either like Rish Lakish or like Rabbi Yochanan. So from the psak din that he said, which must be according to the Rabbanon, not like Rab Meir, which is a single opinion against the Rabbanon, it comes out that he's only according to Rabbi Yochanan. So we now know what the pshat and what Rabbi Yochanan said is. The Gemara brings other Amiram that discuss this. Shalach le Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizde or bar Rav Yitzchak le Rav Nachman bar Yaakov Vilamdenu Rabbeinu. Our Rebbe should teach us regarding the machlokes here. The Fnei Gemara Din machlokes is the argument whether you can back out or not. Is that an argument before the Gemara Din or la'achar Gemara Din machlokes, or is the argument after the Gemara Din? And also v'halacha k'divrei mi. Who do we paskin like the Rab Meir or the Chachamim? Shalach lei, so he answered him la'achar Gemara Din machlokes. Their argument is only after the Gemara Din whether they can back out or not. And v'halacha k'divrei Chachamim, and we paskin like the Chachamim's opinion. Ravashi says that when he asked them about the Mishnah and about the Psak Din of the Mishnah, it was regarding the second point that we discussed before, and that is this is actually regarding the first point that the Gemara discussed before. Are they arguing in a case where the defendant says to the claimant that I'm going to pay you according to this Psak Din, and even there's a machlokes whether you can back out or not, or are they only arguing when the claimant says to the defendant, the tevei says to the nitva, you'll keep your money. If you win it in Torah, I allow you to keep the money. It's just meichel. And in that, regarding that case, who do we paskin like? Shalach lein. It's regarding this that he paskin be'etein l'cha machlokes. The argument is in the case of etein l'cha, even when the defendant says the claimant, I'll pay you. And v'halacha k'divrei chachamim. And we paskin like the chachamim that you cannot back out from the agreement. Now, b'sura masna hachi. In Surah, they had the version of this discussion as we just brought it now. But in Pumpadisa they had the statement and the discussion about this differently, and it was as follows: Omer Rav Chanina bar Shalmiya shalchule mibei Rav l'Shmuel. They sent from the yeshiva of Rav to ask Shmuel, Yilamdeinu Rabbeinu, our teacher Shmuel should teach us l'fnei Gemara Din. What would be if it's a case where it's before the Gemara Din, but the kana miyodei? However, they made a special kinyan. There was a kinyan made for this agreement. It wasn't stam an agreement, a verbal agreement. It's more than just a verbal agreement. Once you make a maisa kinyan, now the question is, would still Rab Meir say that you can back out of that? There's still a machlokes about this. So, what's halach in such a case? So Shalach lahu, and Shmuel sent to the yeshiva of Rav, and he answered them, Ein la'acha kinyan klum. Once you made a kinyan to accept these judges as a judge, after this you can't back out of this, and then the halacha remains. This is the halacha. This is the way it's done today by every din Torah. Once you choose judges, which is what's known as zabla. Once a zeb you choose the judges, you make a kinyan. You shouldn't be able to back out from the judges that are chosen to paskin the din of this din Torah.